Members of the Black grassroots have finally found the name of the killer, the man who killed Jordan Neely. The killer's name is Daniel Penny, and up until now, for about a week now, the mainstream media as well as the police have been protecting this killer, not releasing his name, and giving him an opportunity to save him and his family embarrassment, giving them the opportunity to scrub the internet and their social media of any incriminating evidence or posts. This is not a new tactic. We see the mainstream media as well as the police get on cold to protect suspected white supremacist murderers all the time. For perfect example would be Dylan Roof. We saw that after Dylan Roof shot up a church with about 9 victims to his kill list, instead of taking him to jail, the police arrested him and took him to Burger King for a burger. Does this sound fair to you? Another example would be Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer had a child, an underage boy who he had drugged, who actually escaped his house. A woman and her daughter were able to protect this child, get the police, alert the police to the fact that this child, this underage boy, had clearly been drugged and had escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer's house. Jeffrey Dahmer, as we all know, was a murdering psychopath who would eat his victims, a living cannibal. The police responded by telling the underage child, who was clearly drugged, to go back into the house with Jeffrey Dahmer, who eventually would go on to kill that boy and eat his body. We see in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, despite the fact that this underage teenager was carrying a semi-automatic rifle, which he had no business owning or possessing. It was illegal for him to possess this weapon. And in my opinion, his father should have been brought up on charges. The ATF should have gotten involved for the fact that this underage boy was walking around with a semi-automatic rifle and did end up killing other people on camera. Evidence was withheld from his trial. Even the judge got on cold with this suspected white supremacist. We see this as an all too often occurrence. Here's another case you might not have heard about. Police dismissed black leader's claim of a serial killer, then a woman escaped. Have you heard about this? This story is taking place in Kansas City, Missouri, where a white man, of course, was found to have been holding captive multiple black women, using them as sex slaves, and eventually killed about 5 of them that they've discovered. 2 still are missing. Check this out. In the early hours of October 7th, residents on a leafy street in Excelsior Springs, a bedroom community north of the city, were awakened by the sound of knocking and the faint cry, "Help me!" A grandmother opened her door and found an emaciated young black woman wearing only a latex bondage dress and a homemade metal collar and padlock around her neck. The woman, who was 22 years old, told neighbors she had escaped from a house up the hill where she had been held against her will for nearly a month by a man who picked her up in early September from Prospect Avenue. He had brought her home and used her multiple times, beating her and raping her. Now, praise God for the woman who escaped, and prayers go out to the families and to the deceased sisters who didn't make it. But what makes this story really so bad is the fact that the police on multiple occasions were told by family members of the women who were abducted, as well as black leadership in the area, that there seemed to be a serial killer in that area. The kidnapper, whose name was Timothy Hazlitt, was described to the T. Not only that, the people who alerted the police before the woman escaped gave the very street name from which the escaped woman said she was abducted. The police, in response to these multiple reports of a missing person or missing people, because Ultimately, there were over 7 women who were kidnapped and are still missing. 5 of them already are deceased. The police, in response to these reports, said that these rumors were unfounded. There was no reason to be alarmed. And even after some of the bodies were found, the police said that there's no linkage or there's no ties there's no way we can tie Timothy Hazlitt to the murder of these women. The police are committing a dereliction of duty by failing to commit a full investigation on these victims, for these victims and their families. And the mainstream media is derelict in their duty to shine light on these topics. But we can't complain that the mainstream media is not doing their job. Instead, it's our job as grassroots media to step in and shine a light where there is none. I want to end this video by showing a bit of a contrast between the way 2 stories are being displayed right now. Just this year, 2 children were shot on someone's property for trespassing on someone's property. Check out the way that the mainstream media handles it when it's a black shooter. Check this out.
A witness says 6-year-old Kingsley White and her parents were shot by a neighbor in Gastonia, North Carolina, when some of the kids went to retrieve a basketball that had rolled into his yard.
I couldn't get inside in time, so he shot my daddy in the back, and we think the bullet came back and it hit me, and the bullet went in my cheek.
Oh my. Boy, no child should have to tell that story. You'll see little Kingsley has stitches on her cheeks. Kingsley's father is still in the hospital this morning. 24-year-old Robert Singletary was later arrested and charged with attempted murder.
Now, it's real sad that little white girl got shot in the cheek. I'm glad she survived, and I wish her and her father a speedy recovery. But you see how the mainstream media handles the situation. You notice that they give the shooter's name, they give a mugshot for the shooter. He was immediately arrested, and there's no question about will justice be served in this situation. But check out what happens when a similar situation happens with a black child who goes up and knocks on the door of a white shooter. Check this out.
Well, Murray's 16-year-old Ralph Yarl is an honors student and an accomplished musician in his high school, but he was shot in the head and arm last week. He's made a remarkable recovery. He's gone home, and his mother is a nurse, and she's taking care of him. But the shooter has still not been charged. There is outrage after 16-year-old Ralph Yarl was shot, all because he rang the wrong doorbell. He was going to pick up his younger brothers from a friend's house on 115th Terrace in Kansas City, but instead he went to 115th Street. He was greeted at the door by gunshots.
It's inexplicable to have black people ring a doorbell and then have a white citizen shoot him in the head first and then shoot him a second time. I mean, there is no way you can justify this.
Police released the shooter after only 2 hours in custody and not charging him. The sheriff was asked about the role of race in the case.
The information that we have now, it does not say that it's racially motivated. That's still an active investigation. But as a chief of police, I do recognize the racial components of this case. I do recognize and understand the community's concern.
Authorities say.
So we can see here, first of all, there's no mention of the shooter's name. There's no mugshot for the shooter. The shooter was not charged. He was released only after 2 hours of questioning. There's a vast difference between the way police handle shooters when they're white shooting a black person versus when they're black shooting a white person. The police handles the situation differently, and the media handles it differently. Therefore, I feel it's my personal responsibility to do my part by shining light on these topics whenever they come to light. So I say all that to say, prayers go out once again to the family of the most recent victim, Jordan Neely. And we need to shine a light on the shooter, the homicidal killer, Daniel Penny, who choked this unarmed civilian to death for no reason in cold blood. prayers once again go out to Jordan Neely. Peace. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge and thank all my new subscribers. I appreciate you all for rocking with me and staying this far into the video. If you're enjoying the video and if you're enjoying the channel, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and set your notifications to all so you get an alert every time I drop a video. I release a video pretty much every day, so you can be on the lookout for my next video coming tomorrow. I appreciate you all. Peace. So you made it all the way to the end of the video, but you haven't hit the like button yet. Come on now. You're cheating me, you're cheating yourself. Go ahead, hit the like button. And while you're at it, you might as well smash the subscribe button so you can get notifications every time I drop a video. I make a video every day, a different topic, a different subject. They're all interesting, so you can check them all out by hitting the subscribe button and setting your notifications to all so you get an alert when I drop a video. There you go.